My skin was on fire. My insides were burning. So I got up and I drank a bottle of NyQuil. And I told myself it's not wine, so it doesn't count.
Hilary Phelps is on an all-new intentional living, discussing her breakup with alcohol.
I just had this moment of clarity that where it's just like, you know what? No, this is it.
Her breakaway from perfection. What is enough? Like, at what point is enough enough?
It comes back to self. It's empowering. And once you it's like, okay, I am in control of all of this. It's me. And so what I've learned and what I work on is working from the inside out. I love myself exactly as I am, from the inside out.
And the breakthrough that led her to finally finding her truth.
We can't live in our purpose until we find our voice. We can't stand up for ourselves until we find our voice. We can't set really healthy boundaries for ourselves until we find our voice. All comes back to our intuition and hearing that inner voice.
On an all-new intentional living with Courtney Meyers. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers, a podcast dedicated to those seeking a more fulfilled and purposeful life through thought-provoking conversation, spiritual exploration, and authentic connections. The intentional movement has begun, and if you found yourself here, you are a part of it. Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers starts now. Hi, Hilary. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. I am really excited to talk to you today about some really big topics, things that I struggle with personally, and I think a lot of women are struggling with today. So welcome. We are going to jump right in, but thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation today.
Me too. So you speak all over the place right now about being sober and your journey about being sober. And I am so proud and love to hear the fact that you are open and vulnerably sharing about it, because I think that, and I've spoken about this from day one on the show as a storyteller, I think telling our story is the most important bit. It's almost like the biggest thing we can do, because that helps us connect one another. And I know in your sober journey, it was when you were starting to realize that other people felt the same way that you did is what really helped you along the path. So I think when you're going into something like addiction or mental health, understanding that other people feel the same way that you do is such a powerful tool. And so I think that is brilliant that you are doing that now, because that is going to help so many women. And I've, done a little bit of digging into your story. And even when I'm listening to it, I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is me. Do I need to take my lack of drinking one step further? So how did you really find that courage? Because I know you were kind of closeted for a while, to come out and share, this is my story. How did you find that courage?
I was. And, so I had 15 years sober before I started sharing my story. And this was after, I'd kind of gone through, I believe as people, and, I work specifically with women. So I'm just going to kind of keep it to women. I believe women go through different iterations of who we are, meaning kind of shedding the old skin and having this rebirth, right? And so I had a couple of those. I got sober in 2007. I was diagnosed with depression in 2010. I had my son in 2017. I got divorced in 2021. My dad died in 2022. So I had all these different kind of rebirths. I believe that the birth of my son was a very, and it's with two kids, a very powerful rebirth, because you're birthing a human, and I became this person. But after 15 years of sobriety, I'd gone through a divorce, and I realized it was after COVID too, and there was all of these increased numbers of female women drinking, and I had been in a relationship where I was told it was embarrassing. So I still had this kind of shame around, I think addiction still has a stigma of shame around it. And so I had lived in that space for a long time and thought, not only did I feel it was shameful, but I was also being told it was shameful. And so when that ended, I just had this moment of clarity. And I think we could all kind of tap into that, where it's just like, you know what? No, this is it. And so I decided to start sharing more openly, because what I realized was, if I still felt shame after 15 years, then what about that woman that had 1 month, 1 day, 1 year? How did she feel? And after COVID, I just realized I didn't have the luxury of staying silent anymore if so many other people were sick and struggling with this disease. And so I decided to start sharing my story because, like you said, storytelling is how we're all connected, and it's how we feel. It's how we find community, and it's how we just feel less alone.
Yeah. I mean, but what is it about just like we have to like the shame. We have to deal with that shame because even as you're talking about it, like we don't want to say we're addicted. We don't want to say we have a problem with things, and we hold that in so deeply. I know like I drank a lot growing up. We started in high school and then it progressed through college, like my 20s. And I realized for me, and this is just an epiphany I've had recently. I was drinking through all that time and I went really hard in the paint in college. And then it turned into even more so in my 20s and 30s. I'm realizing now that it was because I was uncomfortable with who I was. So I didn't know truly who I was. I didn't know how to show up as myself, especially in college on my own. I couldn't really find my group or my support. So I drank a lot to make myself feel comfortable. Now I'm realizing I stopped drinking so much. And I find that when I do drink, I drink because I want to make other people comfortable, because I don't want them to be uncomfortable with the fact that I'm not drinking. So it's really weird how this how we internalize these feelings of what we're doing and how it shows up. And so talk about how you experienced the shame and what you went through to realize finally no, this is something that we need to share and talk about.
Yeah. And so for me, I was just a wine drinker. And so I was like, well, I don't have a problem, because what I saw out there when I got sober in 2007 were men living under bridges. They were shown as like Meg Ryan in When a Man Loves a Woman, when she, hits her child, or Leaving Las Vegas with Nicolas Cage, where that was the depiction of someone with an addiction to alcohol. And I was like, well, that's not me. I don't do that. I just drink a lot of wine, I black out, and I make bad decisions. But what I didn't understand was that once I started, I couldn't stop. And to your point, yes, it was always to hide shame, or it was an emotion, right? So I drank over emotions: happiness, sadness, joy, regret, anger. That was the only tool that I had, was to pour drinking on top of it. And I love what you said about drinking for other people, because I think too, as women, we become these self-sacrificers, right? And so we're like, I'm going to sacrifice what I want or what I need for someone else. And whether that's to be, I did the same thing, to be a part of a group, to feel accepted, for my child, for my partner, for my employment. I'm going to sacrifice my needs and my wants because somebody else needs something from me. And so alcohol is a really accessible tool to be able to kind of justify that to ourselves, right?
Yeah, it's really bizarre because my husband, so when he stopped drinking, he didn't do it because he had a problem. I mean, we joke about this, that we both kind of towed the line a little bit. I don't even think I towed the line. I was just there with you. I was the blackout drunk, feeling guilty, I had a problem. I had there's no problem. That is the truth of the matter. And just like you said, I would pour a drink, one glass of wine, fine. But if I got that second glass of wine, and I was a wine person too, if I got that second glass of wine, then I couldn't stop. One bottle of wine, oh, we'll just have another, and then you reached a point, and it would vary because different bottles of wine had different amounts of alcohol. It depended on my mood. It depended what would happen. But I could sometimes drink 2 glasses of wine and stop. But there was just I'd hit that one extra drink, and then it's just blackout. We're just going all in at this point until I pass out, type of thing. But so I don't even think I towed the line. Yes, I had a problem. But so when my husband stopped drinking, he just did it because he did 75 hard, the challenge. And it's don't drink for 75 days. It's part of the challenge. And he liked the effects of it so much that when he finished the 75 days, he's like, I don't think I'm going to go back. It's been 2.5, almost 3 years now. And he hasn't felt the need, he doesn't miss it. He's had, there's been nothing to push him towards it. And because he stopped drinking so much, I kind of pulled back. And then I moved, and now I'm like in a new place with new people that I don't feel this need that I need to drink so much. And so I've stopped, and I just find that it's just kind of like you said, in that self-sacrifice moment. Like I can just drink a glass of wine, and I do it sometimes for that occasion. It's like, oh, I'm having a nice dinner. I want this. And it's okay. And I can stop myself there. But like, I don't even know why I'm telling the story, and I forgot where we're going off. But like,
Sure.
it
Go, tell
I'm
me
just
what.
like going on this tangent. But I don't
It's
even know
kind
what
of,
my question was then.
I mean, so there's a lot of gray space. I mean, so I consider myself someone with substance use disorder, an alcoholic. Once I start, I
Yeah.
can't stop. So for me,
Yeah.
I tried that moderate drinking. I tried to have one glass of wine, and because the mind's stronger than the body. And so in my mind, I'm saying, I'm just going to have one glass of wine tonight, and that's it. And this was in 2005. So this was a while ago. And I laid in bed. And we've all had that experience of anxiety, right? Like where your skin but my skin was on fire, my insides were burning. And I was like, I can't, like, I need to have another glass of wine. And it was just consuming my thoughts. It was consuming everything.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'm not going to have wine, but I need to like quiet this. So I got up and I drank a bottle of NyQuil. And I told myself it's not wine, so it doesn't count, right? I started to make these
Wow.
games with myself. And so I was like,
Mhm.
okay. And then I could fall asleep. But what I learned is that, so for me, it's a disease. It's not a decision. I didn't decide, that I really want to be an addict and struggle and have these moments of, uncertainty and fear. But what I also realized is there's like gray drinkers, there's kind of a spectrum. And then there are people that just decide it's just doesn't fit their lifestyle. Or, I was
Yeah.
working with this woman, and she's in her early 20s, and she said, I don't identify with it as an alcoholic. Like, I don't have to drink, but when I do start drinking, I make bad decisions, and I don't drink till I black out, but I realize I just don't like the way I feel. I don't like the decisions I'm making. I don't like the
Yeah.
people I hang out with. What does that make me? And I'm like, it doesn't make you anything except a really conscious woman, really conscious being that just says, when I do this, I don't feel good. And I said, but I understand that society and culture says, well, this is acceptable. And at the end of the day, you do pour a glass of wine, and that's what we're supposed to do. And these paradigms that we're shown and taught that keep this cycle going and perpetually, well, it's okay, just have a glass of wine, or mommy sippy cup, or, and it's funny until it's not funny.
Yeah, but why do we look down on these things if we're making changes in our life
Yes.
to better ourselves? Because alcohol is the most acceptable drug out there. It is crazy that it is so pushed on us. And it's like we choose not to drink. And that's a good thing. That's a healthy thing. Like, yet we get backlash for it. Like, what is it about our culture and our narrative that we're like, this is like, we should be doing it?
And I think people are mirrors, right? So they're reflective of the good and maybe the challenges that we're feeling. And so when we show up and say, I'm not drinking today, people then have to decide whether or not they're going to accept that and they're comfortable with their decisions, or they're going to start projecting and throwing that onto us and saying, well, if you're not drinking, why not? Oh my gosh. And if you're worried about your drinking, does that mean I should be worried about my drinking? And I think it's that concern that people, it's the same thing of like people that, work out a lot. People that don't work out a lot judge people that work out a lot, or do you know what I mean? Not all the time, but it's just that, and I think it all comes back to just being comfortable in who we are. Like if somebody wants to go and drink, like that's their decision. If somebody like you or I says, we don't want to drink today, then that should be okay too. But it's really hard and that was just what you said, like I was really I didn't know how to say no, or didn't know, someone told me when I stopped drinking, and I still remember this very vividly. She said, because you're no fun anymore. And that was like a dagger because I was like, but I want to be fun. And oh my gosh, this is all I want. I want to be accepted, and I want to be cool, and I want to be funny and fun and all those things. Because that's why I drank, because I didn't feel those things. And now you're perpetuating the idea that I'm none of those things. And so that felt really hard also. And it was a decision that I had to make, that I'm going to surround myself with people, places, and things that help me on my mission, and not do the self-sacrificing of like, well, I got to show up here because I said I'd be at this birthday party, or I'm going to show up here at this happy hour because, it's everybody from work. It's like deciding on what was the most important thing to me, putting that putting that into somebody else's hands and saying, what you think of me is more important than what I think of me. We're taking that power back and moving from that victim kind of mentality that I was feeling less than into that empowered, like, no, this is a decision I'm making for me. Nobody's coming to save me. Nobody here has to live in my shoes. I need to make the choice of what I stand for today and walk in those shoes every day. But it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, how do we do that? How do we find ourselves, especially if we've been masking it for so long with something like alcohol? I've seen it in my family. I've seen it in my extended family. I've seen it in a lot of people I know. And I've seen it in myself. And it is such a crutch. Drinking, eating, like there's so many different addictive things that we can do to mask who we truly are. And I think that's all we are doing. We're hiding. And like, so we need to start looking at whatever it is. Let's say it's an addiction to working out even. I mean, it could be an addiction to something quote unquote healthy. It is, regardless, it's an avoidance behavior. So how do we start to remove these behaviors and start to tap into like our own truth? Because we've been conditioned for the majority of our life not to own ourselves and not to stand in our own truth.
100%. So much here. My brain is like, okay, where to go first? So this idea of emotional sobriety too, it's not the alcohol sobriety, but it's the emotional sobriety. And the emotional sobriety comes from being comfortable with who we are, right? Because you're 100% accurate in saying that we use external things to fix an internal problem or an internal concern or internal struggle, whether it's food, sex, working out, codependence, people pleasing, all of these things, right? And like people pleasing, when someone said to me 20 years ago, people pleasing is manipulation wrapped in a pretty bow. Because all I'm doing is manipulating somebody else's feeling towards me by giving them what they want, right? And that felt, and I'm like, no, you misunderstood. I said I'm a people pleaser. And they're like, I heard you. You're a master manipulator. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. Because doesn't that sound worse? Like, no, I'm not. I'm just making somebody else happy. And they're like, yeah, by manipulating. Oh my gosh. And so it turned that for me to say like, okay, so what is it that I want? And I think when it comes down to that, accepting who we are and living authentically, right? It all comes back to our intuition and hearing that inner voice. And so for me, when I was in 6th grade, I remember these girls making fun of me. And in that moment, their voice became louder than mine in my head. And then I started acting in a way that I wanted others to accept me. And it's hard today. Like like we talked earlier, my son will be 7 in June. And I am ready for social media and bullying. And it's hard. I think it's a lot harder for kids today than it was. And I think it was hard for us. Because middle school and high school is challenging regardless. But I think it comes back to that knowing, what do I stand for? What do I like? And the challenge is the paradigms that we're told, right? Whether it's from family or church or institutions or culture or society or whatever it is, we're told we're supposed to be a certain way, as women, as moms, as entrepreneurs, as fill in the blank. And so I think it all comes down to, which is a lot easier than it sounds, is creating our own paradigm. What is it that I believe? What is it that I like? What is it that I want to do? It doesn't matter if it's, as long as I'm not hurting others, right? Meaning when I say this, that's a caveat, as long as I'm living my life in a way that feels really good and aligned and purposeful and joyful, and I wake up every morning, most mornings, excited, then that's where I'm supposed to be. And sometimes that means distancing from family, distancing from friends, losing people that we love in a way to protect our own authenticity. Does that make sense? But I think a lot of that comes back to this, I love this intentional living, right? It's like mindfulness is one thing. And then so meditation was really, really impactful for me when I started kind of developing my own voice or starting to get quiet enough to listen to it. Because we're so distracted, and even though I'm aware of it, like, I don't know if you do this, I'm still distracted. I'll pick up my phone when I'm in the middle of dinner with my son. I'm like, oh, I'm just checking emails. And it's like, for what?
Yeah.
There's nothing that's more important than that moment with my child. But my brain is telling me, like, be on alert. There's something that, and it's like just coming back to that present moment and being okay with where I am. It's a lot of practice though, right? Because it's a lot of practice.
Yeah. Distraction is the root of so much of what we deal with. Like you said, my mind is going a million different ways too, because I think we could take this so many different ways. But like that distraction, like I'll be driving, I'll be at a stop sign, I'm checking my social media. Like, why? Why? Like we have become so attuned to all these distractions as opposed to our own voice. And I'm curious because like you, I've masked my voice for so long. And so it feels foreign in my 40s now to be stepping in and be like, this is me, and to show up in this way. Is there a way to parent our children so that they don't have to struggle with this later on? Because your son's still young, and I'm with you. I literally just had this conversation over the weekend with my husband about like social media and our children. I mean, I'm still a ways away from it, and I'm hoping it changes by the time they get there. But I am so scared of what they have to go through to fit in and to the addiction to those things, because we're addicted to it too. Like it has to go beyond us modeling that behavior because we have to break our own addictions. Like, is there a way to raise our children so that they can have their own voice from day one?
So this is a great question. And this is something so one, I think modeling is the first step, right? Because if I can pick up my phone and get distracted, because I get frustrated when my son will go like eating dinner and he gets up and gets his iPad. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, you just picked up your phone. So I'm like, you know what? That's fair. So one is modeling. Two is acknowledging. Like I said to him, you know what? You are right. Not, I'm the parent. This is what I do. I'm the parent. You listen to me. I've got that. It's like, you know what? You're right. Thank you for pointing that out. And I'll be more conscious of my behavior. So let's just put them both down, or let's put them in the kitchen so we're not distracted. And he's like, okay. But one thing I've really been working with my son on is the regulation, self-regulation, like nervous system regulation with him, because, they're little. I mean, I think as parents, sometimes I think a lot of people, myself included for a long time, are these children walking through the world, right? In adult bodies, meaning we come from this dysregulated nervous system. So a lot of it is like what you're talking about coming in. It's just also embodying it. So the distraction comes from wanting to change the way we feel about a situation or not liking where we are in a situation. So we look for a distraction to take us out of a feeling or an emotion. And so for my son, when he gets super distracted, super excited, or super, sad or depressed, I'm like, okay, let's come back to your breath. So that's what we focus on now. When I'm like, okay, and he's tired or cranky, or he, because I don't want to put a label on him like, oh, he's this, or oh, he's that, or oh, maybe let's come back to what we're doing. Okay, where are you now? And he's like, I'm really sad. And I was like, okay, can you talk about your sadness? Where's that sadness coming from? And he goes, it's coming from my heart. And I'm really sad that, it was over like a bath bomb, right? So I'm thinking in my adult brain, you're overreacting. This is a bath bomb, But to him at 6, he's like, this is a big deal for him. And so acknowledging, okay, I'm so sorry that you're sad. I'm sorry that your heart's hurting. Can we breathe into your heart? Like, let's acknowledge that sadness. Like, let's welcome it into our body. Do you have tears? Like, sometimes he'll cry. Sometimes he's angry. And I'm like, okay, you can't hit me with your anger, but we can hit pillows with your anger. Like, let's do it that way. And so it's teaching him that emotions are okay, and they're okay to feel in the body, but the discharge of them in order to self-regulate could be stomping or growling like a dinosaur, the voice activation, stomping our feet on the floor to get any stuck energy or stagnant out of the body, hitting a pillow instead of hitting me. So trying to model those things at an early age in hopes that as he gets older, he can regulate those things and then come from a place of responding rather than reacting. Because I think children react because I think adults react. I mean, myself included. I'm not pointing the finger at other people. I'm saying, like, if I come from a place of reaction, then that's what I'm teaching him too. And so that was a lot, but saying kind of that modeling and then acknowledging, right? Model, acknowledge awareness of these big emotions to help keep them present and grounded in the moment. And that's the only thing I have right now, because I have no idea what it's going to look like when he's 10, 15, 20. And there's so many more distractions with VR.
But I love that. I love that you said that, because acknowledging it, I think as parents, we don't give our kids enough credit for how wise they are. Because I literally had this conversation a week or two ago with my daughter. We were driving to her dance class, and she's from 8 months on. That girl has an adult vocabulary. She's just kind of, and I guess I was that way too. So like, you could have a full on conversation with her about like very adult topics. We try not to, but she was just acting out. And I finally said to her, I was like, you can't speak to me that way. And it wasn't like I'm the adult, I'm your parent. It was like, what is going on? So I think, we have to realize just being the adult is not the answer. And we have to, take it one step further. I'm like, what is going on? And she was extremely eloquent in her answer and told me, well, you yelled at me today and that made me mad. So I'm treating you the way you're treating me. And I was like, okay. You're right. I was frustrated and I apologized to her. And she's like, and you're not spending time with me. All you're doing is working. And then I was just kind of like, dagger to the heart and all these, because, they don't understand. I'm working for them. I'm doing something I'm loving, so there has to be a little bit of balance. And so we had this long conversation. I felt horrible. I felt like the worst mother in the world. Like, did I want to come home to bringing back to alcohol and have a glass of wine that night? I did. I don't have any wine in my house, so I didn't. But, I took a bath instead. Yet it made me think. And it's like, I have to honor her feelings and her emotions and acknowledge it. And I think that we need to do that as parents. We need to not think that we're just in charge. And maybe that can help our children foster a voice of their own and honor their emotions and feelings. Because when we're quieted as children, that's what's going to lead us to all these behaviors and not understanding who we are as adults. And that's what's going to lead us to these things that are detrimental to our life.
Because we're taught our needs aren't important, right? If a parent silences a child and says, you're not, quiet down or don't, it's like, I'm telling you what I need, whether it's through crying or acting out, because sometimes they don't know, your daughter sounds very eloquent and like incredible that she has such a gift of expressing herself through these words, which feels really hard, I'm sure, for you. And you're like, but what a gift that she can say it. Because some kids are just like, they just break things or scream or act, you know what I mean? These things of acting out because they don't have the language just to share. And so, but yes, this hierarchy, right, of saying, you will do this because I'm the parent, therefore I'm the most important. My needs are the only thing that matter right now. The child then learns, to your point, my needs aren't important. I'm going to keep my voice to my, quiet. I mean, so my son will say that like, and even now, we've read about this. He's like, if I'm like, can I give you a hug? He's like, I don't think I want a hug right now. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. If you're ready for one, let me know. And and now he does it for me. Like, I mean, because I cry in front of him, I tell him like, and now, the other day we were getting a bath and he was like crazy. You know what I mean? It was like bedtime and I'm tired and he's tired. And I was just like, and I brought my hand to my heart and I started breathing and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm feeling really frustrated and agitated. So I'm going to take a couple of moments just to breathe because I don't want to yell because that's not going to help anybody, but I'm just feeling really agitated. And he was like, okay. And he got quiet, he got out of the bath and we ran about our day. But again, it's that modeling of like me yelling at him and trying to overpower him creates discomfort, right? And then, but yeah, I think you're right. It all comes back to that, like allowing them to express their voice. And I let him tell me, he's like, I don't like it when you did that. I'm like, thank you for telling me. And he asked, he's like, can I have another popsicle? Which sounds so trivial. I'm like, thank you for asking for what you want, but we had 2 today. And I think that's enough. And he's like, oh, so I'm acknowledging it. I'm hearing him, I'm acknowledging it. And I'm telling him, it's not a good idea. Tomorrow we can have one, but today we're finished. And he's like, okay. So he feels seen, he feels heard, he feels validated. Right. And hopefully that then allows them to know that their voice is just as important as anybody else's.
I wonder, as we're speaking about this, if things like alcoholism or any sort of addiction problem starts in our youth, in this behavior that we're doing as children. Because even as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about the fact that even growing up, I remember my sister was the one that would like fight back. She was real feisty. If my parents were in a fight, she would yell. She didn't like it. She would like join in. And I remember like I have this seared into my mind. And sitting on the steps with her and my mom and dad were fighting about whatever, just a normal fight. It's not like they were abusive or anything. There was just some random fight. Or maybe they were mad at one of us, whatever it was. Because I turned to my little sister and I go, just do what they say. Just be quiet and it'll pass. Like I was already people pleasing then. I was already playing small then. Excuse me. Because I didn't want to assert myself. She wanted to put her voice into that mix. And I was just kind of like, it's better if we're just quiet and small. And
Are you the
so I'm
oldest?
wondering, I am the oldest. Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
And so
the
I don't know if it was
peacemakers. Yeah.
peacemakers. Is it, I mean, I wonder if it's like a protection mechanism for our younger siblings to like parent them and help keep them safe in our own limited capacity. Or if that's just kind of like, I was already quieting my voice then. Like, is this stuff all so inbred from even something like addiction from such a young age? I wonder.
I think so. And so I've done all kinds of work and just,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff as we all do. And I've lately started doing a lot of nervous system regulation, and somatics and like connecting the head with the heart, the head with the body. And what I've realized only in the last couple of weeks is that and this is not, I adore my parents. I love them. They were great. But there's, what I've realized, there's micro neglect too, right? Meaning my parents both worked. We were middle income, 3 kids. We were swimmers. It was expensive. Like we had childcare. They did the best they could, but we all have some level of trauma from when we're little, even if it's little things like that. And for me, what was really important, and I started thinking back, did inner child work and going back, is that all I've wanted from the time I was little is to truly feel connected, to have these, connected conversations and then when I couldn't find it and when I started self-medicating, I was a straight A student. I was the fastest swimmer in the country. I had all of these things on the outside that looked like she's great. She's got her stuff together. I just had a lack of connection. And when I found alcohol, it silenced that need. Or it filled the need. I don't know what it was, but it made me feel better. And I could then pseudo connect with other people through alcohol, as we're all drinking alcoholically. We're all drinking to escape. And that was the connection. And that was the connection that I was looking for. And so, yes. And for me, I couldn't then stop because I believe it's a gene. I believe it's a disease. I believe, it runs in my family. And so I didn't have the capability or the capacity then just to put it down as I got older and say, oh, I need to look at new tools or I need to look at something differently. It was a physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental obsession with alcohol. Yeah. I think you're spot on.
I mean, I'm writing about this right now in this fact that we all have trauma. We all do. Yes. And I think there's more people walking around like you and I who had a wonderful life. Great parents, a great upbringing, probably given everything you want. I mean, not spoiled, but like given every opportunity, you got to pursue swimming. I was able to pursue dance and writing and all the things that I wanted to do. Like there was no limit to what I can do. I got to go to the college I wanted, I got all the opportunities, like everything looked wonderful. Yet something in me was unsettled. It was always there. And I think so many of us are walking around on this planet feeling that way. There are the people with those big traumas, with the molestations and the rapes, or seeing someone they love pass away. Like those are big traumas. And I think we think if we didn't experience that, then we don't have a right to say we have issues. Yet more of us have these trauma. More of us have these little issues, and we're showing up in life in such inauthentic ways that we need that escape. We just are unsettled and we're not connected spiritually. And I don't care what your religion is. We're not connected with something bigger than us. It's not religion, it's faith. And that's where we're going wrong.
Right. And it's like faith and fear are both having belief in the unknown, right? But a lot of people put their belief in the fear because it's chaos and it feels comfortable. So any trauma feels chaotic and comfortable, right? So we're used to going into that fear. And it takes a lot of bravery and courage to say, I'm going to step out of this chaos and stepping into something that feels really unsettled, even if that unsettledness, that's a word, is joy and happy and all the things, because we're not used to that, right? Like we're used to in any capacity. And there's this amazing book, and anybody that I have a conversation with for more than 5 minutes has heard me talk about this book, What Happened to You. Have you heard of this? By
Oh,
Bruce
yeah.
Perry
I've heard of
and
it. I haven't
Oprah.
read it, but yeah, I have heard about it.
I'm listening to it on Audible because how I learn better. I mean, those things absorb. I'm telling you, it is the best because what it says is, and it talks about just what we're talking about, trauma, meaning we all have it. It is trauma regardless. Our body doesn't know the difference in microtrauma and major trauma. Our body is so, we just deal with it, whatever that level looks like, right? And so to your point, right, the same thing with alcohol. When I started looking at my drinking, I'm like, well, nobody else around me, meaning in the media, or there weren't people talking about just wine drinkers. And so I'm like, well, I'm fine, right? So there weren't a lot of people then talking about these micro traumas or micro neglect. Like we are all human beings that want love and connection. And I think a lot of us, to your point, are all these wounded children walking around. And that's where the reaction comes from. We're walking around hurt, insecure, trying to look good on the outside, burning alive on the inside. And so what can we do to, right? It comes back to that inner voice, authenticity, being okay with that, and being allowing everybody else to be themselves also. Again, as long as you're not hurting other people, murdering, hurting children, like those things, you know what I mean? Those big things. But if somebody wants to, I don't know, if a boy wants to wear a skirt, like, okay, it has no impact on me. If somebody wants to, I don't know, drive a car, like, I don't care. Like all the, I can't think of anything that, because it's nothing, it doesn't bother me. Doesn't have an impact on my life. And I think we're so focused on what everybody else is doing because it makes us feel more comfortable instead of focusing on what we're doing and just staying in that space of ourselves.
It's funny how you're saying that because like, even when you allow yourself to finally kind of chill and go like, okay, I'm good in this moment, I've actually started experiencing panic attacks for the very first time because it's my body going. And I had this pointed out to me by another coach, by another healer that said to me, I was like, I was chill. And all of a sudden I started having a panic attack out of the blue. Like everything was okay. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't worried about anything. She's like, it's because you're addicted. Our body is addicted to the fear. Our body is addicted to the chaos. It's like we're addicted to the cocktail our mind brings in. And that's exactly what alcohol is doing. It's feeding those emotions, those cocktails in your body, and we crave it. And just feeling good, we can be just as addicted to fear and chaos as we can to good. It's the same. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an addiction specialist by any means, but I feel like it's the same kind of concept. Our body is craving that, whether it's alcohol or just utter fucking chaos.
Because our brain is so much more powerful than our body, right? And so our brain can tell us anything and can convince us of anything, right? So when I was, now, like I could convince myself that, I don't know, you don't want to be here talking to me right now. And I can create enough stories in my mind. It sounds crazy, right? But my brain, I can be like, oh, well, this and that. And you're like, okay. So all of a sudden I've convinced myself that even though we're having this great conversation and this is wonderful, that you actually, don't like me, aren't going to air the pot, whatever that is, right? It's because that's what our brain tells us. And so coming into that space of like, okay, well, I'm going to acknowledge that. And I love that because I do that too, but you're so incredible about being able to acknowledge and be awareness is the first and acknowledgement is the second, because without the awareness of it and without the acknowledgement of it. So if you would have been like, no, I'm fine. Push it down, then you can't change it. Right. So without that awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, then those are the kind of the first three steps in order to create any kind of change, whether it's addiction to alcohol, whether it's anxiety, whether it's that same thing of looking for the chaos, right? And then acknowledging it like in our body, saying like, it's okay I feel anxious today. Okay. Thank you for giving me this information. Thank you for bringing this to my attention and my awareness. Okay. And then trying to quiet the mind, letting the body absorb it. But the brain just wants to protect us. And it's so loud.
Yeah. It's crazy because our brain goes to these paths so easily. It's like innate in us. Yet our body does not lie. Like we have to listen to our body as well. I know you're saying that our brain is so smart, but our body holds all of this in it. And our body is going to show us what's working and what's not, no matter what we do. We can shut our brain off all we want, but we can't ignore our body because that's kind of like where our intuition lies, is in here.
Yes. You're right. And it's like tuning into that. So sorry if I didn't explain that. Like the body the body will say one thing, but the brain will come in and try to tell us no, right? Like the body says, I'm tired. I want to go to bed early tonight. The brain says, no, you have too much to do. Ignore it.
Yeah.
The body says, I'm hungry. The brain says, maybe not for everybody. Well, you didn't work out today. So, maybe it's not a good day. And I think as women, right, we have such that challenge of being in our body too, that we allow our minds to take over the feelings in our body because we're taught to be, we put more on our tray. Okay, no, I can take that on. Of course I can pick up the kids. Sure, I can do more at work. Of course I can do whatever that is, but it's that people pleasing. And so we have this idea that we can just keep going and ignore this, right? And listen to this. But you were spot on. All of those things like lives in the body. And it's telling us.
I wonder how we totally bring it together. Because even last night, I was getting ready for bed and I said to my husband, almost 3 years later, I'm still trying to lose the baby weight after 2 kids. It's like, I want to lose the weight. And I was just like, I just don't know what to do. I don't know. And my husband says to me, well, you're just not making it a priority. I'm just like, how am I supposed to make this a priority when my mind is so filled every day with all I have going on? Yet I know consciously what I need to do. I can't put myself first. And that's why I think as women, we struggle so much. It's like, I know everything that's going on in my mind will be done and taken care of better if I start to feel better about myself. Yet I won't take the steps to get there. It's the same thing with like, if you're waking up and realizing when you're, hungover or blacked out addiction, I don't want to do this. We consciously know that we want to make changes in our life, but it's overcoming our brain to actually, our subconscious literally to make these changes because we get so wrapped up in these cycles that I can't do this or it's too hard. How do we do that?
I think there are also those outside, right? So if our body is chaotic and we're chaotic on the inside, we're going to start putting those parameters into place, right? Meaning the ways to create safety in our life because we feel so dysregulated and chaotic on the inside. So we're like, okay, well, my home is clean. Okay, I ate well today. Okay, I worked out. Okay, I did all those things. So therefore, I'm good. I'm perfect, which that's not a thing, right? Being perfect, like this idea of being perfection is just the inability to sit with our imperfections. And so what I've learned and what I work on is working from the inside out instead, right? So if I can come from a place of, because like I look down, I'm like, man, I swim for 15 years. This is different. I had a child and my body is different. And so I've tried to switch the narrative a little bit, right? Like I love my body the way it is right now. And I move my body because I love it. And so I had to change a lot of that. That is mindset in order to feel a little bit better. But for me, I would say things like, okay, if I don't run for an hour or if I'm not doing a 90-minute workout or I'm not doing this, it doesn't count. So I'm not good. I'm not good enough because based on what I had, growing up and swam for 15 years, competitive, full scholarship to 4-year private college, did an Ironman, certified in yoga, like all these movement modalities and like athletic accolades. And I'm like, well, if I can't do this, therefore I'm not good enough. And it's like, if I love my body the way it is, what if I just walk for what if I walk for 20 minutes? That's it, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to start with that because that's what I have today. If it's all or nothing, I'm going to go for a 20-minute walk. And that started to create that, okay, you know what? I moved because I love my body and I want to feel good. And it's like, okay. And then you start to crave it. You know what I mean? Like it starts to then feel good where then it becomes a non-negotiable, but it all started from that place of just loving. I love myself exactly as I am from the inside out. So instead of like the outside in, working from the inside out.
Yeah. That I'm not good enough. That's on repeat all the time. And I don't think it's even just a perfectionist. I'm a people pleaser perfectionist, just like you, at high achieving. I think that adds to it, but I think women in general deal with this so much. I'm not good enough, or I don't have enough time. Like this, just like we don't have enough. What is enough? Like at what point is enough?
That's a great question. When I went into treatment, I went into outpatient. we went around the room and we were talking about that. And I said, okay, well, I was also smoking cigarettes at the time. And I said, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to quit smoking cigarettes. I'm going to quit caffeine. I'm going to quit sugar. I'm going to quit fake sugar. I'm going to become a vegan. And then I'm going to run a marathon. And then I will be perfect. Then that's my, and they were like, okay, well, one, just don't drink today. Because that's all you really need to do to be perfect here. Like, that's it. Just don't drink.
Yeah.
Two, I mean, tell me if this resonates with you. Once I achieve that, I'd be like, oh no, now I'm doing an ultra marathon and then I'm going to become a raw vegan and I'm going to learn French. So then I'll be perfect. It's like it's moving the needle. Right. And so I think the trick is like, I'm okay with where I am today in an effort to be the best version of me I can.
Yeah. Cause I'm very all or nothing. I'm very all or nothing. It's like, I'm going to literally do 2 workouts a day. I did this. I would do back-to-back spin classes, go to work, come home, do a weight class, restrict myself to 1,200 calories, write a book, do freelance work because I had to buy a house on literally the list would go on and on and on. And I'm not good enough if I don't all do this. And I can't even ask for help. I got to do it myself. It's like, it's on me. And it's just like, when can we take a breath and just sit with ourselves and be like, I am enough now. Like, we don't need all of this to make ourselves feel worthy. Yet we put this on ourselves.
Yeah.
We do it to ourselves.
100%. It's it's a self-sacrifice, So my question is, you're saying all that is I want to be like, were you happy?
No. I mean, yes, in some ways I'm like, yes, I achieved that because I am that I have that in my psyche. Like, oh, I achieved that. Like I take pleasure and joy in hitting these goals or crossing something off a list or one upping. It's like this, it's almost like a drug. You almost feed off of it that I did that. No one else could do this as good as me.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes you feel enough. I mean, that's ego at its best, I guess, coming through. So it's kind of like, how do you get out of your own way just to be like, no? I mean, it sounds so zen, but I mean, you were such a high achiever. I mean, you come from such a high achieving, push yourself background, but you've been able to find yourself in this place.
Right. And so what I had to do too is that's the masculine, right? Doing, achieving goals. That's the masculine. And I had to really learn to lean into my feminine energy. And what I mean by that is being. And how I first learned about, kind of this, the kind of trying to live in the two spaces equally, but not all the time, is through yoga. Vinyasa yoga is a very, masculine energy yoga. It's moving, it's doing. Yin yoga, which I started really loving, was being. And I noticed the difference in kind of the quieting of the mind. While both were quiet, I was like, oh, I understand this. I'm like, okay, how can I take this into my life, right? So the vinyasa, the doing, is the work, doing professional things, which most of us have to do, and if we're really lucky, we get to do things that we love. But the feminine part is just being, right? And so for me, what that looked like is not, trying to take a full day without my phone, being, not having a plan, which is hard with children, which is just being. And so the days, my son is with his dad on a Saturday, not doing anything. If I want to go to a farmer's market, awesome. If I want to go to yoga, great. If I want to sit on the couch and sleep, fantastic. But it's just kind of being in the flow. And it's really, really hard to get into that space if you're so used to doing all the time. It's a challenge. And so that's why yoga was really good for me. Guided meditation was really good for me to start tiptoeing my way more into that space of being in that feminine flow. Because I think in one society today, in culture, we're told that it's, that it's better, less sleep, more doing, especially as women, because we can do it all. We can do it all. And we're going to prove that we can, we can do it all. It's really hard. And for us high achieving, goal oriented, driven women, it's also very hard to just be.
I think it's also, you're a firstborn child. I've read that the firstborn is always the male, like is always male or female is always treated with that male energy. I know you have a brother and I'm watching it even with my daughter and my son, like the difference of how we treat them. And my daughter's the firstborn, like when it's not necessarily the gender per se. It's kind of like the firstborn becomes that is treated as like the prized child, the go-getter, the masculine energy. So, I mean, I think it's also kind of in our upbringing, subconsciously, unconsciously, we're treated that way. So it's kind of like, how do we come back? Because I know my sister doesn't act this way. I see the difference between Harper and Hayden. I'm sure you're different than your siblings. There is some sort of a difference in the way we feel we have to approach the world.
Yeah. And then my mom would say that too, because I have a sister and a brother. And and she said, she joked, she's like, I had 2 girls first. And my friends that had boys, the boys were crazy and the boys were, this is more for the actual gender, but and you girls were really good on your own and you could sit still. And then I had a boy and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Boys have more energy and girls are more quiet, can do things on their own. But I think you're right, because as a firstborns, like we're the leader. Like that's what we do. Our parents, like when I had one child and I know the way that I parented him because I didn't know. And I was so worried I was going to break him so I was perfect and, doing all these things and making sure everything was. And if I had to have a second one and be like, okay, I can be a little bit more relaxed. And I think that shows up in the second child as well. I mean, this is just an opinion. But then our parent, I would be a more relaxed parent than I was for my first. And so then, perhaps that gives them a little bit of freedom or permission to be a little bit more relaxed, where the firstborn is achievement oriented and a doer. Yeah. That's interesting.
But we are being invited now more to step into that divine feminine in general. I mean, we're seeing it in conversation across the board right now. It's kind of like we started talking about mental health. We started talking about, then that led into talking about nervous system regulation, like all these little topics. It's like one thing's building upon the other. And now I feel like stepping into our feminine is a big topic of conversation. And there's a massive shift towards more of that do. We don't have to be that boss bitch. We don't have to do it all. We can allow more. And so I think there is a shift towards that. And hopefully we'll start to see it more, that we don't have to be that high achiever to achieve a lot.
Yes, I agree. And I think this comes down to, like we talked earlier about, like purpose or inner voice. And it comes to this idea of personally too, like I could lose myself in my purpose, right? Like whether that's being a mother or being an entrepreneur, all those things, we lose ourselves in our purpose and forget that who we are at our core, or that divine feminine, because we're like, nope, this is my purpose and I've got to do to achieve it, versus like, I don't want to lose myself in that. And I want to continue to just be me. And I love this divine feminine topic that you brought up too. And I love that more men are allowing themselves to feel into their divine feminine, not be feminine, but allow themselves that kind of like that stepping back and just kind of the flow. But I do think this also comes down to like boundaries, right? I feel like I'm all over the place, but it's making sense in my head, meaning, when you say that, like boss bitch, right? Like I had a friend recently, she's like, I really want to start my own company, but I don't want to work on the weekends. And I'm like, then don't. And she's like, no, if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a woman, I have to work all the time. And I was like, you don't. And she's like, you don't work? I'm like, no. I set boundaries with my clients. I say, I will answer you between 8 and 5 within an hour. Because if I see clients and, it's sometimes it is an hour. After 5 o'clock, that's my time with my son. And I'll get back to you. Unless it's if it's an emergency, call me. Otherwise, this is my time with my child and I'll respond to you once I get him to bed. Same thing with emails. I tell people I don't answer unless it's an emergency. I don't really check emails on the weekend. And I've designed my life in a way that I can do that, right? But I think that comes to boundaries and letting people know what the boundaries are. And then they know, right, how far they can go. Meaning, okay, I'm not going to answer, or if I email her on the weekend, I know she won't get back to me until Monday. Right. And so it's also putting those parameters into place to protect that space, to be, my friend calls it intentional white space, to have that quiet. Like I'm not going to be on my computer at 11 o'clock at night because it whips me up and then I don't sleep well. When I don't sleep well, I get really cranky the next day. When I'm cranky the next day, I'm short with my son or, but putting those into place, I think creates ease too.
I love that you're saying that because I have no boundaries. When you do work for yourself, when you are an entrepreneur, hell, even when I used to work in TV, like literally, I would be reamed the next day. I remember I had a boss just tear me a new one because he emailed me at 11:35 at night and I was asleep and I didn't answer the email till 6 a.m. when I woke up. And so it's like doing that for so long, but being in the entertainment industry, it's another beast. I feel like it's not good for your health, but regardless.
No, and then you're coming into that day stressed, dysregulated, anxious, and that's going to inform every decision that you make from that point of the day onward, unless you actively decide to change, to center, to ground, to mindful. But a lot of people don't. That's how they into like, nope, I'm anxious. I'm going to go out to my day. I'm going to cut people off in traffic. I'm going to yell at the barista for getting my coffee order wrong. And then that impacts their day. And then that impacts other people's day, right?
The ripple effect. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But like even now, I will work until 2, 3 in. There's no one holding a gun to my head. I've created my schedule. It's like, how do you start to allow? So, and even, that's just sitting with that uncomfortableness that we all have to do. That's why we would pick up a glass of wine or whatever it is because we don't want to sit. It gives me anxiety to think that I'm not working on my purpose. I'm not working to move the needle forward more. And I don't want to sit with those emotions. It's that distraction. It's everything we're talking about. It's like this addiction. It's like we have to learn to sit with these feelings. 100%. That's what emotions. We come back to from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yes. They're triggers for anything, for good, for bad, right? It's triggers so emotions also tell us, right? Whether we're good enough or whether we're doing enough or and if we come from that place of I did the best I could today in every situation and I don't control the outcome, but I know I went into this day giving my best, showing up as good as I could today. Yeah. That's all that. And then I have to turn it over and I've got to let the outcome go. And that's really hard. But it comes back to practice. If we continuously do it and practice that, it gets easier. We continuously say, I'm not going to answer your email in a weekend and they continue to do it. It's our choice whether or not we hold the boundary, we answer on Monday, or we get frustrated. We're like, fine, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to get online and answer. We're then negotiating against ourselves, and so it constantly comes back to what are the things that we're promising ourselves? What are our needs and how are we meeting them? If I'm continuously negotiating or getting rid of my needs to meet somebody else's in any capacity, I'm going to continue to show up dysregulated, discontent, stressed out, and emotional. Then that's going to inform, right, how I respond the rest of my day. Am I going to pick up a drink? Am I going to over-exercise? Am I going to buy things I don't need on Amazon because they get delivered tomorrow? And this is like a quick hit fix of dopamine. But you're right, it's uncomfortable to sit in those feelings of discontent or sadness or anger. But that mindfulness. I could go on, but just
I'm just even thinking it's like we really have to get away from the distraction. Distractions are so easy for us. It's like almost like distraction prime, it's like we don't need Amazon Prime. We have distraction. Well, there's so many different ways we can go to distract ourselves and not sit with ourselves. And the only way we heal ourselves and help heal others, because like we said, it is a ripple effect, is if we allow ourselves to get quiet and actually feel what we're feeling, because it's going to come out in some way, shape, or form. So if we don't do it, all we're doing is prolonging it. It's like rip off the Band-Aid.
And the easiest way to do that is being aware of it, acknowledging it, and accepting it. Right? It sounds easy. It's not simple. It sounds easy, but that's it, right? It's acknowledging, okay, I feel this way. Or being aware of it, acknowledging it, and then being like, okay, I'm going to own this. It's going to be okay. But it comes back to self. And that's the beauty thing, right? It's empowering. And once you it's like, okay, I am in control of all of this. It's me. And that's what I wanted too. When I first got sober, it's like, I wanted someone like, honestly, I wanted Prince Charming to come in and save me. I was like, okay, I'm going to quit drinking, and then someone's going to come in and fix me and help me and solve me. And, then this other person's going to bring joy and contentment and happiness into my life. I was looking still for something else, and it's taken, I was 45 probably when I was like, no, I just turned 46. Yeah. I mean, it's a journey, and that's the beauty. It's like, I'm like, how old am I? We never arrive, and that feels so like eye roll, like, oh my gosh, we hear this 1,000 times, but it's truly, if you enjoy the mile you're in and know that there's going to be some great days, some challenging days, but every step we take is towards a more, authentic version of us. And we never arrive, but it's just being mindful in the moment. And I love this thought of that nothing is good or bad. It just is. It only becomes the good or the bad when we start putting definition to it. If we just take every moment as it is, like, this is how it is, it feels a little bit easier.
Well, and also if we can start to realize like whatever we are going through is part of the journey. I mean, like you brought up the idea of purpose. You had to go through what you went through to find your purpose. You found your purpose now through struggling through addiction. I feel like I've just turned 42. So, it took me up to 40 years to really finally start to step into being like, okay, I need to actually start changing some things in my life and stepping into my own. It took that long, but now I can look back and see the more I step into this journey and the more I lean in, you can see how everything led to this point. So yes, it might have taken us 40 some odd years to get here, but it was designed that way for a reason. So it's not good or bad. It's designed to create the journey that we need to come to where we're going. And like you said, it's an ongoing journey. It's going to evolve. Let's hope so.
And then tying it back to the very beginning, and then the storytelling, being able to talk about our journey and the experiences, the highs, the lows, and everything in between, creates that connection of community with other people, maybe who are, just a little bit behind us on the path. Or, I had somebody say, she goes, I was struggling to not drink. I was kind of drinking, I would not drink, and I would drink, and I'm not drink, and I'm not drink. And she goes, the day I met you is the day I stopped drinking, because you gave me hope that life would look normal. You know what I mean? And so we need people to talk about their experiences. And you're exactly right. Without people having done it before, we don't know that it can be done. But when people that have gone through it and come out the other side tell other people about the way that they did it or their experience, or there were some really hard days when I didn't want to get out of bed, when I thought, that's okay too. Because I think people just see the highs and they're like, oh, well, of course you're happy. You had, and it's like, no, there were some really low moments and they're okay. And I got through them, and you can too. And I can help you because I'm going to share my story, or we're going to share this, but it's that shared community of struggles and happiness that I think get us.
Yeah. And I invite more people to actually start sharing as we're going through things, because a lot of the times we can look and see like, okay, well, yeah, that's fine. You did that then. You went through that, but you're on the other side. I can't make it there. When we start to really open up and share, even when we're in the midst of it, and I don't mean we have to air out all our dirty laundry or use our pain or our struggles for publicity, but just being honest with the people in our lives that we can. It allows us to, with our select people that we feel that we can be open with, it allows us to realize, I can walk through this. There is light on the other side, because, as great as it is to say, you made it through this, this is possible for me too, we also have to know we're not alone on that passage.
Yeah, because I think there's just a beautiful strength and connection. And in another book I recommend to almost everybody is, have you read Women That Run with the Wolves?
No, I haven't even heard of it.
Okay, I'm going to send you these books. I'm going to email them to you. It's amazing. And it talks about just the power of female intuition and guidance and this inner voice. And when I read it, it kind of also gave me this, the 3 books are Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life by Bob Proctor, Women That Run with the Wolves. And I keep getting the thumbs up. And What Happened to You by Bruce Perry. The 3 books are there are 3 that have changed my life. But yes, so you're right. Like my purpose, I mean, I've done a lot. I've done photography, I've done PR, but it wasn't until I started sharing my story of recovery and sobriety that I realized my true purpose was to help women find their voice and find their voice, live in their truth, and find their purpose. Because I know what it felt like for so long to feel lost. And getting sober was my first step in being able to even allow this journey to be possible. Because if I wasn't sober, it wouldn't be as healing or impactful as it's been. And so what I decided to do was start to work with women. And so I work with women in a couple of different ways. I do individual coaching for them, one-on-one. We do group coaching. We have a couple of things that are launching that are kind of self-guided, because I want every woman to have the option, no matter what is going on in her life, to be able to find her voice. Because I think from there, we can make so many powerful. We can't live in our purpose until we find our voice. We can't stand up for ourselves until we find our voice. We can't set really healthy boundaries for ourselves until we find our voice. So I want to help women tap into what that is, so they can find their own inner voice and use that as guidance in every decision in their life.
I love it. And where can we find all these programs?
HilaryPhelps.com for now. So it's 1L. Everything is on there. We have you can set up a discovery call. I set up, even if it's just no intention of kind of the coaching, if you're just like, I just want to have a conversation, I take every call that I can. I respond to every email and DM. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to respond to everyone, but I do. And if I can't help you, I always try to send people to the resources that I have, or people that I know that are in that space that could really help. Because I believe we all deserve a little bit of compassion and to be heard. And I think that's what we want: to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, loved. So I try to do my part in there.
I agree. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for this wonderful conversation. I love connecting with you today.
Thank you. Me too.
And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Hilary Phelps, for the wonderful conversation all about sobriety, finding our inner voice, and getting comfortable being uncomfortable. If you want to work with Hilary, I'll put all the information in the show notes below. And as always, you can find Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers and Intentional Media on our website at CourtneyMyers.com. That's where you'll find our books, our courses, and everything else we have coming up soon. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.